Hi, everybody. It's the Week in the Tackle podcast, the podcast where we get together on a weekly basis when one of us isn't on holiday and tackle the things that we thought were interesting from the last week in football. I'm Tom Rennie, back from the Canary Islands. He is legendary broadcaster, Botox aficionado, an MLS legend. Brian Dunny, is that your real forehead? Dunseth. Hey, buddy, you all right?
I'm fantastic. As we record this is Monday. And usually we do like Yacht Rock Tuesdays or something, but I didn't realize it was Sugar Ray Mondays for Tom Rennie. I didn't realize the obsessiveness of you with like the little goatee and like the highlight spikes when you were at Brighton University. Until I came across that factual statement, I was unaware of the fact of your obsession with Mark McGrath and Sugar Ray, but I made sure all the listeners over on Counterattack were rightfully aware of your obsession with Sugar Ray.
I don't know who any of those people are, but I do know that you look like Sugar Ray from the song Butterfly. Is that is Butterfly their big hit?
Yeah, whatever.
Is that it?
I just want to fly. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Butterfly, I just want to fly. I'm just a guy. I'm Brian Dunny. I don't know. It's something like that. So I don't know who that is. I'm glad you had some fun with me today. And I'm glad you and Tim were able to cover the show last week as we covered you the previous week. I very much enjoyed. So I listened to it on the beach in Lanzarote last week. It was very funny because the first like 10 minutes, you just giving him wedding advice, which I very much enjoyed. Do you think he's taken any of that on board, or do you think he's still going to marry her?
No, no, it's not about him marrying her. It's about her marrying him.
Why would you do
That's the concern. Yeah. Regrets. Everyone, just don't. We all know that. No, the advice, if you missed it last week, was for everybody out there. Like I remember somebody said to me, like, on your wedding day, you're paying for all these people to party effectively. Yeah. But take some moments because like you're gonna be drugged in so many different directions. And I think as we all kind of look back, those like split seconds of like connectivity, looking each other in the eyes, grabbing each other, holding each other, giving each other a little kiss, sneaking away for a little naughty, whatever that means. Like, just take advantage of it.
What? That's what you do before you get married, isn't it? And then after you get married, you never do that again. That's the rules.
My wife and I would joke around, like, you got to take the car off road to make sure it's 4-wheel drive.
Is that code for what are you talking about here? You saying we should probably beat both of those. Sorry, Tim. But it was risque. It was risque is what it was. It was risque. That was what you meant, right? No? Is that not the code?
Oh my God.
No.
You definitely are taking advantage of holiday, huh?
Yeah, I am not properly back yet. That is true. I am not properly back. I'm still very much checked out. I'm very much.
I was just insinuating, like, are you guys like sexually compatible? I didn't know you had to take it to that level.
Well, now you know. That's how you keep it fresh, bud. That's how you keep it fresh.
Good to know.
Look, lots to get through on today's
program. Blow my nose now.
I tried to. Well, I think that's what you were blowing. I can't be sure what you were trying to say. If I'm honest, it's very confusing. Sorry, Tim. I very much
going to beep the whole segment.
Just beat the whole lot. The whole intro's dead now. A few things I want to talk about today because I missed, obviously, like last week. So I want to talk a bit about Leicester going down because I really developed a dislike of Ruud van Nistelrooy, which I want to talk about. It could be my own problems. But as a Man United fan and him being a Man U legend, I'd love to know whether you can balance me out on that. I want to talk about the Niclas Fullkrug rant from a sort of player dressing room perspective. I'd love to get your view on that. Bit of MLS, and we'll do some heroes and villains as well. So that's what we're going to do on today's program. But first, go to Lanzarote. Great. I really enjoyed it. My favorite thing about it was, so I'm a big fan of the Pina Colada. It's an excellent drink, but what they had,
do you know where it was created?
Well, go on.
It was in Puerto Rico.
Is that right? Is it why?
Yeah.
Why do you know that?
So when we went on a cruise and we stopped in Puerto Rico, walking down the street, and there's this big sign. And signs tell the truth. It's always factual statements.
That's it.
But
that's signs. Signs tell the truth is an excellent
it tells
mantra.
The truth. 100% factual statement. But in Puerto Rico, that's where I can't remember his name, but Jade and we partook in the original Pina Colada location, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was in Puerto Rico, and they were so good.
I bet.
And we had like 3, and then we stood up. And then we understood why this was the location to drink pina coladas. So just so you know, if you're ever in Puerto Rico, that's the genesis of the pina colada.
I didn't know that, and I doubt very much the pina coladas I was drinking in my all-inclusive hotel in Lanzarote were the same caliber of it. But I did very much enjoy the fact. So I went to the sports bar quite a lot with other dad friends. which was great. I very much enjoyed that. The kids were in bed by 7. The game was on at 8. Perfection. And it was on like the pump, like a draft of Pina Colada, which was like low quality, but excellent. I very much enjoyed it. But my favorite part being away was, again, I tried to not watch the football, and I put my phone in my like safe quite a lot so to not be near it. Yes, I did smash my old phone. I'm currently updating my new phone now because I dropped my phone in the toilet, as in like I was on the toilet and dropped it on the tiled floor. Very frustrating. It's cost me hundreds of pounds, this, if not thousands. But my favorite bit was I went to the sports bar with other dads, and it was the Arsenal Real Madrid game. And obviously you're in a Spanish territory, and so all the staff were fans of Real Madrid, but most of the clientele were English. And so it was like I was team Arsenal in the sort of Champions League Lanzarote sports bar banter-a-thon. And it was honestly probably the most fun I've had watching the football like all year, mainly because I go to West Ham games. So that was excellent. Very much enjoyed that. And it was great. So we might not have time for it, but I very much enjoyed it. Let's get to Premier League this week, and let's get to this Leicester story, because this is just... So I knew Leicester were rubbish, right? And there's an overriding narrative of if you go down and you come back up again, the gap has never been wider. It's the second time in a row the 3 that have come up have gone down. Is it a broader theme, or is it 2 moments of happenstance? We'll kind of bear that out over the next few years. But I hadn't really... But I knew it, but I hadn't really comprehended. They haven't scored a goal at home, Leicester, since the 8th of December when they drew 2-2 against Brighton. Since then, here's the results. 0-3, 0-2, 0-2, 0-2, 0-2, 0-4, 0-3, 0-3, 0-1. Is this, even though they probably won't go down bottom, is this the worst Premier League team, top flight team that you've seen in sort of, not living memory, I guess, but what you can remember? Because I can't remember a team. Imagine people who go. Like they, going to a football game is often it's a tough day in lots of ways when you're a fan of someone who's not in the top 6, top 7. You don't always know you're going to win, whatever. But you expect to score a goal. Even Southampton has scored some goals. Even Derby in 2007 scored some goals. Like, how do you not score a goal for 5 months, Dunny? That's extraordinary.
Well, especially when you still have a guy like Jamie Vardy up top. As you were talking, I started thinking about this. Thinking about Iheanacho, thinking about Dewsbury Hall, thinking about James Maddison, thinking about Harvey Barnes, thinking about Timothy Castagna, even Amarte, Johnny Evans, to an extent in terms of leadership, Tielemans for sure, even Iosi Perez, Soyuncu maybe in the conversation. I mean, they've gone through. Yeah, I mean they've some old heads, some experienced players. I hate to poo-poo on everybody, but we talk about the Premier League being the most exciting league in the world for the obvious reasons, for the heavyweights that are constantly competing for Champions League, and this dogfight of usually what is a Premier League title outside of an extraordinary year for Arne Slot and Liverpool. But I think it does go to show that like when you get it wrong, like it's really difficult to recover. And there's a joke in here about Brendan Rodgers, and there's there's some type of conversation and nuance the conversation about mismanagement as his son is just glaring into my eyes. And then ultimately, player performance. And it at some point, I know there'll be an article in The Athletic that the canaries in the coal mine is singing about the mismanagement of money or players being brought in or profit and sustainability or parachute payments and all of these different things. Because like going down to come back up to go back down, there's going to be some serious jeopardy for Leicester City.
Yeah.
And the hope is that, they're not, 9 years on, disappearing into the oblivion. The idea of when you have a group of players and you've ridden them out maybe a season too far because of loyalty, because of respect, there's always something in there. But behind the scenes, in terms of investment in the squad, the elusiveness of trying to be able to really describe in the right way, the financial spending or lack thereof. How much can you take from homegrown products and put that back into the squad versus, you know, the inevitability of having to sell players that you've purchased or now are losing for frees because their contracts are coming to an end. You know, Harvey Barnes, Tielemans, guys like that, would they have made this team much, much better? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But do you have to get out from underneath, you know, James Madison? Do you have to get out from underneath their salaries because you've been relegated? Absolutely. So, and by the way, that turns into a whole different conversation about like, oh, there's jeopardy with being relegated. Yeah, not so much for guys like Harvey Barnes and James Madison and guys like, I don't know, the list goes on and on. Sheridan Shaqiri, pensive, frustrated, by Stoke City, moving on to Liverpool. But yeah, listen, it's not a good look. I know you're going to ask me about Ruud van Nistelrooy. The reality is for Ruud, I loved what he did with Eric Ten Hag. I think it was a foundation of common sense for Ten Hag at the time. I thought when he took over in those 4 to 5 games in between Ten Hag's departure and Ruben Amorim coming in, he did a lot of great things in terms of the respect that he had for his playing career, but also I think the way that he manages the group. We all kind of thought that he would get the bump, and I thought he got an early bump out of Leicester.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if this
first 2 games.
And I don't know if this is more talking about him as a manager versus more about what he has available to him. But I think we all expected more. And I don't know. I almost hope Leicester City would commit to him going down to the championship immediately.
Oh, do you?
No. Because at least then there's clarity. But I also feel bad for Leicester City because they invested in Enzo Maresca. And Maresca gets them back into the Premier League and instantaneously jumps ship to go to Chelsea. And everybody would make the same decision. But I don't know if it says more about the opportunity or says more about the human in Enzo Maresca for dumping Leicester, because then you go to Steve Cooper, who's a completely different manager. Then that doesn't work out. And then you go to Ruud van Nistelrooy. And maybe you should have stuck with Steve Cooper earlier, but that again shows the jeopardy of coming up and coming down. We've seen the injuries. We've seen the creative ways that Ipswich Town has given up points, the inability to hold on to leads, and that's ultimately doomed them for the return to the championship. So again, I know it's not as easy as I think we all want it to be when trying to explain Leicester City, but to your point about the 9 games without a goal at home, even, you know, Lacazette Vardy can't get his goals. Yeah, it's disappointing. You got to feel for Leicester City fans who were part of the most iconic moment 8 seasons ago and 9 seasons on. We're not talking about Champions League football. We're talking about championship for 2 out of the last 3 seasons.
I mean, I think there's a few points on this for me, and I want to see what you think about it as well. The first bit is the kind of macro of it, in that we are all, if you're not a club that have got sort of old money, if you're not a Champions League club or a club owned by a country, you're only 3 bad windows away from being in serious, serious trouble. And you've only got to look at kind of West Ham, Wolverhampton Wanderers, even Man U and Tottenham to a degree this season to sort of see that. And of course, the flip side of that is Aston Villa. 6 years ago, they stay up on the final day or less than that. And now they're in the Champions League and potentially trying to qualify for a 2nd season in a row. So it can flip very quickly if you're not an old money sort of club. Leicester are the example of how you can go from, oh, that's a very well-run club to, wow, total disaster. Of course, there's like a circumstance with the owner passing away and the son not being as
some horrific. Everything's gone sideways.
Yeah,
horrifically.
I mean, and the son coming in and having to take over his multinational corporation. You know, it's not just like slip in and take that over. I don't know. I feel like I can't really criticize him too much. Yeah, unbelievable travesty. If the old owner was still there, who knows? But whatever. But that's the macro conversation, which I think is really interesting, and we'll certainly delve into that more when all 3 are confirmed relegated. The micro of this team is also fascinating. And I want to talk to you more about Ruud van Nistelrooy, because like not scoring in this amount of games is, of course, down to the players. But I do think the coaching of this team to not be able to score a corner, to not have a pathway to score a consolation goal in a 4-0 loss at home against Brentford, or the loss against Palace or Fulham or Wolves, or even Liverpool this weekend where it was 1-0, but should have been 15-0. Like it was not a close encounter in any way. Like, that to me suggests the coaching of this team, the setup of this team was totally wrong to not even be able to find a way to just lump one in the box to somebody. It's bad recruitment, absolutely. And it sort of leads to that conversation about Ruud van Nistelrooy and what you want from your manager when you're getting relegated. Because I've supported a team that's gone down. And when a team goes down, I want, you mentioned Harvey Barnes earlier and some of those other guys who Xherdan Shaqiri, we move on. But when they go down, even the ones that are going to leave, some of them felt it. And some of them really didn't want this. And some of them gave everything. I'm thinking about Scott Parker when West Ham went down. Scott Parker could not have done more to try and keep West Ham in the Premier League, including being the manager at the many occasions that Avram Grant was asleep at the wheel, quite literally at times. He's giving team talks at half time. You knew when he then went to Tottenham, which, is not great as an ex-West Ham player, you knew that it wasn't because he threw the towel in. He busted a gut to try and keep that team in the Premier League. And then I sort of cut to Ruud van Nistelrooy a couple of weeks ago. We spoke about it after the Man City game. And the Leicester players are over there clapping the Leicester fans. Where's he? He's de facto signing autographs for Kevin De Bruyne and all these other guys because he's a celebrity. And then, like this weekend, they're confirmed relegated against Liverpool. And the camera cuts to Ruud van Nistelrooy. And is he crestfallen? Is he ashen-faced? Is he like, damn, we blew it here? No, he's hugging a bunch of Liverpool stuff because they've nearly won the league. He's hugging him. It's not immediately turning to his crowd, his people. I think he has come in here, Ruud van Nistelrooy, and because of the apathy in the crowd, he is going to get away with being hated. If he was my manager, I would absolutely hate every reaction he has given after these defeats. I would have hated that reaction to them being relegated. Liverpool nearly winning the title is not your business. Hugging Liverpool staff is not your business. The very first thing you do is your players, your supporters, your people. Yeah. And he's coming for me on a bit of a jolly. And he'll walk off and maybe get PSV or whatever, FC Twente or a Heerenveen or something. And it's like, he'll be able to just move on from this. Yeah, I know teams in the Eredivisie. One of it, off. Sorry, Tim. But like...
there he is. He's back.
Name 6 teams in the Eredivisie. That's 3. Yeah. But like, just that element of it. So give me your view on that, because if that was my manager as a fan or a player, I'd be pissed.
Obviously, I'm conflicted, right? Because he's an iconic presence as a Manchester United fan. I did enjoy him being a part of the coaching staff. I really liked, by the way, Turtleneck looks sharp. He looks sharp back in like November, December.
But he's a tourist. He's a Leicester tourist.
Well, I'm sorry, to what he had in the short term towards Man United. Like I liked what, it's a quick little bounce, whatever. I actually would have liked him to stay on, but I understand why that can't happen.
Do you think he'd want to? Do you think he would want to stay, Van Nistelrooy, if they asked him?
At the time, I thought it was worth the conversation because, and now watching how the season's gone on, I think when you have a guy, listen, if Højlund and Xerxes and Garnacho and Amad Diallo and all these guys are Cheeto Obi Martin, all these, like they're working with Ruud van Nistelrooy in the finishing phase, like of training, how could you not listen to that? Like, I can remember I did a finishing session with Jurgen Klinsmann when he was finishing his badges before he became a coach, and he was at LA Galaxy, and Ziggy Schmidt had him out, and he was like, going through, and it was like, the guy, Jovan Karofsky, Kobe Jones, Hercules Gomez, like these guys were on the field together, and he's like, okay, this is the passing pattern, this will be the finish, and like nobody could do it. And Jurgen's like, no, like this. Boom, boom. Whoop, hits a side volley upper fucking V. Sorry, Tim. And he's like, yeah, that's how you do it. And we're like, yeah, because you're Jurgen fucking Klinsmann. Like, that's why you can fucking do it. Sorry, Tim. Sorry, Tim. Like, yeah, that, of course, like, we can't do that. Like, you can, it's like, I would imagine like Thierry Henry in training sessions with Belgium or France or whatever. Like, there's just like this elusiveness of like quality that nobody else is. That's why you're world class.
Yeah.
But like to pick his brain and find his movement, and like listen to him say like, no, like this foot, like don't be on the back foot, like move, like all those little bits of information, I think would be incredibly valuable. But
that's striker coach though, isn't it? That's not manager.
Well, and you could say the same about Wayne Rooney, right? Like Wayne Rooney.
What's he been teaching Leicester for 4 months? They scored a goal.
Well, and again, like I remember like some of my teammates that were like the most offensive minded guys that I've ever met. The moment they became a coach, all of a sudden they were the most pragmatic defensive team that you've ever seen. And you're like, you fucking hated defending. Like, sorry, Tim.
I've
Like,
set
oh,
him off
now you
now.
got me going.
He's gone.
Now you got me going. Yeah, it's popped off. So again, like very Dutch personality. We don't
Aloof.
understand his, yeah, we don't understand. Well, and also like I learned very quickly, like with Dutch managers, don't ask them questions you don't really want the answer to, because like they're going to give you the answer that they feel is the correct answer. And there's like, it's very clear transparency. Like, I didn't think I played that well. No, you were fucking terrible. Like, sorry, Tim. Like, like it's just so much like, I didn't want to hear that. But we also don't understand the management of players. We don't understand the training protocol. Like, we don't understand like his algorithm for how he creates his starting 11. It's obviously not good enough. At this point, there's no jeopardy because everyone knows they're going down. So there's, and we'll talk about Niclas Fullkrug and West Ham and that conversation, that post-match interview. I thought it was brilliant because, I say this all the time, like you want guys that are like willing to punch somebody. And I mean that like not in a walk of life, but at the highest level of competitive atmosphere, there's like a hierarchy. There's like an accountability. There's like a no nonsense. I was using this with Aston Villa. I said, John McGinn. John McGinn for me isn't the best player, but he's the metronome. He's the most important player for Aston Villa because there's non-negotiables. Like he's the guy that's going to lift you up by the seat of your pants and be like, let's fucking go. Sorry, Tim. And then he's going to be the guy like, no, watch me. I'm going to drive 50 yards, hit a fucking banger. Sorry, Tim. You got me going. I'm gone. I'm gone. Lost it. But that's what you need. And I don't see those guys. And you also wonder from like an undermining perspective. And you've got the very, very experienced guys that have been at the highest level. And you've got the guys that are young and dynamic and 15-year-olds that are coming through. Who was it? Jeremy Mongo coming in for the final 15 minutes, or final 7 minutes of the game, 15 years old. Like there's so many different complexities. But yeah, I mean, I'd rather know, is he going to stay or is he going to go? And either way, I think for Leicester City fans, you want clarity at this point because it's just been a terrible season.
So what about then the future at Leicester? Like, I think he should go. I think he's done a terrible job and the players have been poor, but he has handled everything very badly, Ruud van Nistelrooy, including the fallout with Harry Winks, which has been kind of a joke, but also he's not come into fertile ground to make any seeds grow at all at the club. So absolutely take that mitigation. But what about the future for him personally? Do you think that staying at Leicester in the Championship would be good? Because if he hadn't sort of taken them down in this really humiliating way, he might well be seen as a good appointment coming into next season if it was a fresh appointment, right?
I think on both sides you want ambition. I think that's the easiest way to clarify it, succinctly. You want ambition from the club, ambition from the owner, ambition from the financial investment into the group, ambition that you're going to have the ability to identify the players that you want. We talked about Rooney earlier. Like Plymouth, is that the ambition that you want? If you're Andoni Iraola, do you want the ambition of Bournemouth with the owner that's willing to invest? I think it's a very nuanced. I think because Ruud van Nistelrooy's name, similar to a Frank Lampard, similar to a Steven Gerrard, similar to a Thierry Henry, similar to a Wayne Rooney, that name will get you into the door. Right? 10 times out of 10, well, at least like we should probably have a conversation with him. So I think no matter what, there's going to be ownership groups that will look at Ruud van Nistelrooy and say, yeah, what was he really supposed to do with Leicester City? Though other people say, man, he, like yourself, he didn't get anything out of that. Like that's a concern because as a manager, if you can't manufacture some type of momentum, like obviously, Wolves is a very different type of conversation. David Moyes at Everton, very different conversation. But like, if you're Vitor Pereira right now, and you can manufacture points then pints, like that guy's got something, right? And so, David Moyes going back to Everton, like you don't want them to get relegated because they got this incredible new stadium coming. Like he's created manufactured momentum. So I think that's the concern. If you're looking at Ruud right now and you're saying, God, how could you like have that spark in that bubble from 4 or 5 games with Man United, the first 2 games with Leicester, and for this to fall off the edge of the cliff? I think those around the club covering the club on a week-to-week basis, but probably give us better insight as to why this went so horrifically sideways.
But I mean, everything basically. I think Jamie Vardy in a post today called it a show. Sorry, Tim, and I think that kind of sums it up really, really well from the way Enzo Maresca left, and they thought he was going to stay, then he left them sort of high and dry midway through preseason plans, to the financial issues, the lack of investment, the poor players, the relying on 38-year-old Jamie Vardy, the hiring of Steve Cooper, then the sacking of Steve Cooper, not standing by that decision, then the hiring of Ruud van Nistelrooy, then the terrible January transfer window, all of it. Disastrous season. We'll keep our eye on Leicester because, you know, there is a yo-yo element to down and up right now, but next year there will be a points deduction, I'd imagine, for the previous financial PSR discrepancies. And when you've got that and then you don't come back up again, who knows? We wish them well, but I don't know. Listen, before we get on to the Fullkrug picks, I want to talk a bit more about that, because talk about someone that's not had a new manager bounce. Graham PE teacher Potter is one of them. But if you've enjoyed the program, do give us a 5-star rating on whatever platform that you are listening on, be it Spotify, be it Apple, be it whatever platform that you use. Our 5-star ratings always help us in the algorithm to get pushed to new people. So please give us a 5-star rating. If you can write a review, please write a review. We've got a bunch that we haven't read out on air yet. We'll get Tim when he turns up for work. To be fair, we both had the last couple of weeks off. I shouldn't say that. But
Timmy's talking balls somewhere.
Somewhere, not here right now, but he's listening to this in post and probably his face all screwed up. But we'll collate some of the written ones and we'll read them out on the program at a later date. And also, word of mouth is the best way to spread podcast interest. And so tell a friend how much you enjoyed Week in the Tackle, and they'll tell 2 friends, they'll tell 2 friends, and then do we all get STDs? I forget how it works now. But anyway, do that. Okay, do that. Right.
By the way, but really quick, you know what I do?
What?
I jump on my friend's Spotify when I'm over at their house, and I'll subscribe to Week in the Tackle, and I'll start to play it, and then I'll exit it. So then it's in your recently played top 6.
That's nice.
So, there you go.
That's nice. I like that. Steal your friends' phones is what we're suggesting. Let's get to this Niclas Fullkrug thing, because if it wasn't for how bad the bottom 3 were, I think West Ham and Tottenham and 1 or 2 others would be a real conversation right now. I mean, West Ham have won 9 games all season, 5 at home, couldn't hold on against Southampton at home this weekend. I mean, look, I won't do the full thing here, but I thought Graham Potter, I mean, he has done a real bad job. He has done a real bad job. We can talk about the players not being right, as we do with kind of Amorim, and we can talk about...
You called it. You called it, Rennie. You said this group of players doesn't fit Potter ball.
Which is true, which is absolutely true. And again, I think that is a real proper mitigation for how bad it has been, but it shouldn't have been this bad.
I agree.
And this weekend, the way it sort of played out, the substitution team against Southampton, a team who had 10 points at this moment, he took off Fullkrug because he couldn't go any longer. Fine, but he brings on Thomas Soucek, so suddenly they're playing 5-5-0 against Southampton at home. We've got nothing to play for. Then the formation so battered at this point, no one knows where they're playing. And Niclas Fullkrug, who, look, on one hand, I do think you've barely been here this season, mate. So, you know, it's all well and good to criticize everybody. But if you could occasionally have been fit for a couple of weeks, we might have been in a better position. But whatever. It comes out, I don't think it doesn't feel like he's got any relationship with any of the players because he's barely met them. But he basically came out and said, look, it's a mindset problem. I'm not disappointed. I'm angry after what we did after we scored a goal. The motivation wasn't there. Sorry, but we were sorry, Tim. It's not the first time we scored a goal this season, and then we just shoot the ball long. We stop trying to play football, and we just sink deeper and deeper. And he goes on to say, half the team wanted to attack, and half the team wanted to defend. And we can talk about, I mean, I could do all day about how much I dislike a lot of these players in last year's transfer window. Todibo, I think, is useless. I think he's bad in every facet of the game. I don't rate him at all. There was no Wan-Bissaka this weekend, but...
He's been good.
He's been fine. When he dives on the floor for a sliding tackle, he's fine. Beyond that, I'm not sure.
Somerville?
Hillman's been useless. Somerville's barely played, been injured all season. The midfield, like you look at what other teams have got, someone who can drive through midfield. The midfield lineup is Ward-Prowse and Soler and Soucek and Guido Rodriguez and Edson Alvarez and Paqueta. None of them can do the Premier League thing, or just pick it up and carry it 20 yards. So why did you buy 6 of these players? It's insane. So there's all sorts of issues there. The squad has been poorly built, and
Jared Bowen's been consistent.
Beyond Bowen, I think they'd be in the bottom 3. He's really saved the season.
How much Mikel Antonio injury?
Oh, massively, massively.
I mean, obviously we can. He can generate 10 to 15 goals in all competitions.
At his peak, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I think they're not having.
So even 9 or 10.
But not having that central striker all season has been a problem. Fullkrug has missed 5-6 months. Antonio is going to miss 6 months, and Evan Ferguson is a wisp of smoke at this point. He's useless.
I totally forgot about Evan Ferguson.
Came on the weekend and somehow made them worse, and they were playing awfully at the time. Like,
gosh, I forgot about him.
He'll be up front for Port Vale next season. He's not going to make it at the top level. But like
Coventry City,
they're too good for him, I think. But to go back to the Fullkrug thing, give us a word, firstly, on Fullkrug's outburst from sort of a player's perspective, and then either go on to it yourself or I'll come back to it. Like, Graham Potter has come in, and for Fullkrug to say half wanting to attack and half wanting to defend, it might not be his team. He has coached them for 5 months. Why don't they know?
Yeah, no, and on top of that, Fullkrug's got a contract through 28. He's 32 years old.
I mean, another example of the summer, right? What a
yeah. No,
million. And they have to sign Todibo, who's crap, and they have to sign him. That's how bad last summer was.
No, trust me, I get it. And Griarsi, the replacement at Borussia Dortmund's been phenomenal. Replacing Fullkrug. Listen, I told you, again, for transparency's sake, I thought with that window, and with Lopetegui, that you guys would be what Nottingham Forest was this season with Nuno. And obviously, I'm a complete fucking idiot. Sorry, Tim. Because it's been really, really painful. And I think the blame, we can talk about stylistically about the managers and the training protocols and everything, but neither of these managers have gotten a tune out of these players.
Yeah.
Lopetegui loses his gig. What was his name? The guy, the technical director, he lost his job.
Oh, Tim Steidten, who is
Tim Steidten,
a diabolical window. Real
so
bad.
and he identifies Graham Potter, and Potter gives him the old to the jugular Mobland style, brings in his guy. And you were adamant that this group of players didn't fit Potter ball.
Yeah.
The injury, I think Mikel Antonio's injury changes the trajectory of the season. They're safe. There's no jeopardy. Listless. I mean, it's the Crystal Palace moment where there's 10th, 11th, 9th.
But
14th.
This is 17th we're talking about. This is going to be like the
any other year
position they could come without being relegated. And it might not be part of the squad, but it's still not the 17th worst squad in the country. No way.
No, and with Wolves showing so much momentum, Everton showing so much momentum outside the Tarkowski injury obviously changed the trajectory against Man City. Spurs are terrible. United are terrible. Somehow both will figure out a way to one will figure out a way to get back in the Champions League through winning the Europa League title.
Wow.
I mean, it's Fullkrug's comments are spot on. I listen again. Transparency. I watched Fullkrug at Borussia Dortmund. I watched him up close and personal with the German national team against the U.S. in Hartford. I told you he was going to be phenomenal for you guys. I thought it'd be a great pickup.
He was the best player on the pitch this weekend, but he just missed 6 months. That's the trouble.
And that was the frustration, right? Because he was injured. I told the story today on Counterattack with Miola that when I was at Bayer Leverkusen in '98, that Niko Kovac, like that type of group, there were so many non-negotiables. And this kind of like German mentality. It was funny. One of the guys was like, dude, you're so laid back and fun. And then we get to training, like you turn it on. Like our focus in Germany is like, we're in the tunnel. Like Tuesday comes around. It's like Saturday. Like no jokes. Saturday. And like, that's what I saw from Fullkrug. And you need a guy, what is he, like 6'1", 6'2", like tough, gritty, 32 years of age. Like you need someone to kick out of everybody. Sorry, Tim. And that's who he is. But how much of that equity from being on the treatment table versus being on the field and like living and breathing and suffering does he have? Does he have that equity? He's saying everything correctly. And he's the guy that's going to get stuck in on tackles and probably be willing to fist fight somebody because like these older guys, there's something about these older guys, right? Where, coming through, I forget where he was before Werder Bremen, like Nuremberg, to Werder Bremen, to Borussia Dortmund, to being with touching distance, to winning a Champions League title, to now coming to West Ham. Like, this is like penultimate opportunity. So I get where he's coming from. But yeah, I mean, to your point, from a frustration standpoint from West Ham, it's like, well, man, we could have used this in December. So again, I don't have anything as a player. I don't think he crossed the line with what he said. But from a manager's standpoint,
yeah,
I think Graham Potter could probably take offense in saying like, That's not my training module. These aren't my tactics. You guys aren't applying what I'm sending you. But that should be, we were just talking about Ruud van Nistelrooy. That I, I have more of a problem with Graham Potter not being able to manufacture something out of this group than, say, Ruud van Nistelrooy with that group of players. Because this group of players is better than what their performance suggests.
And then just on the Potter thing more broadly, I mean, Julian Lopetegui was a disaster, and I'm not advocating for him to have stayed. And Tim Steidten's transfer window was obviously diabolical, and they are missing. We're going to do some heroes and villains in a minute. I'm going to do Aston Villa, which is the exact opposite of what West Ham have got in midfield. A whole bunch of players who can like bully you off the ball and carry it 30 yards upfield. You don't have that in the Premier League. You are sorry, Tim. And West Ham do not have that, and they didn't identify it, which is insane to me. But they still should be able to beat a team who've got 10 points at home and not be like basically fearful of conceding against them for the final 20 in a game that did not mean anything. Let me remind you, it meant absolutely nothing. West Ham could have got no points in the last 4 months and are still going to finish above Ipswich Town and Leicester City, right? So it meant nothing. And yet we're sort of seeing them be fearful at home of a 1-0 victory, which is just, I hate that so much. But like, I just wonder whether, again, we've given the mitigations and we've done this with Amorim and we've done it with one or two other managers like Graham Potter right now. I just wonder whether there should be a conversation about whether there has been enough promise in what we have seen since his appointment 5 months ago.
There hasn't.
That we should then let him have the summer and build for next season, because the build's going to be massive. The rebuild is huge. The players need to be identified. And right now, what confidence would there be in a bloke that once got Brighton 9th and won some leagues with Ostersunds? Who gives a shit? Sorry, Tim.
Ostersund.
Whatever. Why would this guy, considering Julian Lopetegui won the Europa League, wasn't good enough? Why would this guy, who's essentially a no mark, why should he get the summer given that he's shown absolutely nothing since he's been there?
Well, and that's the challenge, right? Because the reason why he waited as long as he did was because of the stain of the departure at Chelsea. And walking away, when he came in, everybody was like, well, of course, this is a natural progression for the success he's had at Brighton. Let's see what he can do with bigger players. And I always believe there's that first couple of days, the first couple of training sessions, the first couple of meetings, whether you actually win the players over or you get found out. Because if you get found out and the whispers and the hee hee ha ha and like, okay, like that happens, man. I can promise you it happens.
And I think that has happened with a few West Ham players with Graham Potter.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
They don't seem to care at all. Should we do some heroes and villains? We're a little bit short, so let's get to that heroes and villains of the weekend. Give us something from MLS for this week. We've not done any.
Yeah,
this week. You
my
must have
villain
a hero for us.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna go. My villain is gonna be an MLS. It's gonna be a referee. It's Sergii Demianchuk was the referee during Toronto FC Real Salt Lake at Real Salt Lake. Toronto FC went up 1-0 early in the match. It's around the 60th minute. We got the argy-bargy, players wrapping each other up in corners. And Petrazu, the defender for Toronto, wraps up Diego Luna. Diego Luna, MLS Young Player of the Year, MLS All-Star, and beloved by Mauricio Pochettino, is going to be a mainstay in the U.S. men's national team going forward. They go to ground. As Diego tries to pop up, Petrazu, he wraps his legs around his leg. Diego Luna kind of like pulls his leg out. Referee straight red. Violent conduct, straight red. Drew Fisher, the VAR, one of the most respected officials in the CONCACAF region, says, hey, Sergii, need you to head over to the monitor. I'm going to send you for a review. I don't think this leads to the level of violent conduct on the red card. At least that's what we assume, because we haven't heard the audio yet.
Sure.
He goes over. I watched, and I'm watching the game. I'm up in the Delta Lounge in Seattle trying to fly home, make it home in time for Easter. And I'm watching it, and I don't see anything. I'm like, well, he must have stomped on him. Like, he must have done something to be straight red. They show 3 angles. All he's doing is pulling his leg out. And I'm thinking to myself, well, we go over. They go to the quad monitor. We see what the referee's seeing. 1 time. 2 times. 3 times. Goes on for like 2 minutes, showing multiple angles. And all I see, like I've got my analyst goggles on. There's no stomp. He's pulling his leg out. At most, I'm thinking like he's going to downgrade it, show him a yellow card. Maybe show him both yellow cards. He walks away, hands on the hip, audio. After review, sticking with the decision, red card Luna. All of us in the, like those in the stadium, They show Pablo Mastroeni. All of us as broadcasters, I'm watching Twitter. All the analysts on Twitter that cover Apple, like there's not a shot in hell that that's a red card. So by the time we come back, remind me, because I guarantee Real Salt Lake has already appealed. They will win this appeal. There's no way, shape, or form that the referee should have stuck with it. When Drew Fisher, who's one of the most respected referees, sends you over, you might want to lean into why he's saying it and why he's describing it. I'm all for referees sticking with their original decision. I'm totally fine with that. But there also should be consequence and there should be jeopardy, because this was so blatantly wrong in a moment like this. And this is not, I love Diego Luna. This isn't, I live in Salt Lake City. This is from an analyst perspective. I would have said on the air, I 100% disagree with this assessment, because it never rose to the level of violent conduct. There was never a stamp. There's never thing. So what's going to suck about this is not only was it wrong, but for Pablo Mastroeni and company, 30 minutes chasing the game, trying to get something out of it, where they were by far the better team. So it's like a double jeopardy. They lose the player they shouldn't have. They play 30 minutes down a man, which they shouldn't have. And now what I think is going to happen, this will be reversed. It'll be turned over. He'll be available next weekend, and there'll be no consequence for points dropped other than maybe this referee doesn't referee for the next couple of games. So that, for me, I don't know if we want to verbalize it as a villain, but I just thought it was a really poor decision that we saw acted out in real time. And I guarantee you a week from now when we're meeting, we'll be talking about Diego Luna was available at the weekend for Real Salt Lake.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's more and more common. It just goes to, like, you need to have someone in there saying, is this a stupid thing to have done in the VAR room? And also
does
they
it make
review it
sense?
immediately. Just like, and also
doesn't make sense.
Just have your phone on you. Like, not everyone's going to smash their phone up in the toilet on a holiday. Like, have your phone on you, check it immediately. And then also that makes it a little bit less high profile when you go to the side. You can just sort of correct yourself quickly. And it's not a whole scene where you're then pressured to overturn my decision, all of that. Take the pressure off. Give them their phones, quick TV monitor. You can check things with regularity yourself. Just 1 sec, mate. Yeah, fine. And then just have someone saying it's.
But to your point, though, it also shows the complexity of, we can have IFAB and we can have the laws written and we can have the idea of the application, what's different in the Premier League versus maybe different in the Major League Soccer, which is different than CONCACAF Champions League or UEFA Champions League. But what we also forget is that these human beings have egos. And within the scope of this ego, they're all going to look at these moments differently, and they're all going to apply the laws of the game differently. So as much as we want to talk about it's a problem, VAR and technology, it still comes down to the interpretation, the human being, and then the application. So human error is still a big part of this conversation.
Yeah. I don't really have a villain this week because my villains are Ruud van Nistelrooy and West Ham United, and I've kind of covered them in detail.
We could tell.
So I'll just give you my hero of the week, and it was the game I sort of came back to cover on Saturday, which was Aston Villa against Newcastle. And everyone was saying, "Oh, I think Newcastle win this going into the game." I was like, "You joking? Like,
no chance.
Look at Aston Villa. Look, I mean, they haven't lost at home since August, and they beat PSG in midweek. They of course lost the tie, but won the game." And I just think Aston Villa, not just for this week and the bounce back from PSG and the brilliant way they handled it, the fanfare of it all, the sense of belonging in the Champions League quarterfinal, all of that I thought was fantastic. But I think every decision Aston Villa have made in the last 2 years is worthy of us giving them our hero of the week this week. Because like we spoke about Leicester and how you're 3 or 4 windows away from it all going wrong. We've done West Ham today. They have a couple of bad windows and bad managerial appointments and whatnot, and it sort of led them down. West Ham and Leicester could easily be third, but easily 17th, right? That's how quickly it can change if you're not old money. But watching this Villa performance, it was just such a vindication of all the things they are getting right. Now, I won't do too much on it here, but like Ollie Watkins, who scored in 34 seconds, saying he was absolutely furious to have not started against Paris Saint-Germain in midweek, but to come in and play the way he did, that shows he's been properly motivated by Unai Emery. He has responded to that well and gave us what he gave us. The signings there brought in, you mentioned John McGinn earlier on, but McGinn and Rodgers and Kamara and Tielemans, but also Onana and Ramsey, who came off the bench, and Barkley as well. They've got a whole bunch of players that have been thoroughly thought through. And they bring you the right things you need to succeed in the Premier League, but also Champions League. But if we just look Premier League, what do you need to be able to do? You've got to have finesse. You've got to be able to control the game. You've got to be able to slow it down. You've got to do multiple jobs. But you've also got to be able to carry that ball 10, 20 yards up the field under pressure. Look at Tielemans doing it. Was he doing that at Leicester?
McGinn
I'm not
goal.
sure he was. Look at John McGinn. Look at Morgan Rogers. Look at the Onana goal as won by Ramsey in the build-up to that fourth goal. Onana, who's not been amazing this season, really, but they can bring him on to add the power and finesse that's necessary to get through these moments. The signing of Asensio, the signing of Rashford, the development of Konsa, the development of Maatsen, the keeping Emi Martinez, notoriously spiky character, very happy at Aston Villa, all of it.
Monopoly money for John Duran.
I mean, but even that, the management of the John Duran sale and the kind of teasing of the Watkins sale before then selling Duran and pumping up that fee. Everything Villa have done as a club, from boardroom level, the fans, the Champions League run, the realizing Steven Gerrard was crap and not just sort of seeing it out and going for a cheap, free Graham Potter-like option, going, no, Unai Emery's available. Let's spend some money and get Unai actual Emery to this club.
Monchi's been great. Yeah.
Monchi's been amazing, like doing all of that. So I just think it was encapsulated by the last few days of Aston Villa. I'd fancy them to get above Chelsea and Forest and maybe even City and get into the top 5, but certainly I think they'll get in there with, I'd fancy them above Newcastle right now. They beat this weekend. Everything they've done, I think, Dunny, it just deserves a little bit more credit. It's getting credit, I know, but just watching them this weekend and the way they're able to turn that game and recover so quickly, it shows they are built to be back in the Champions League next year, and I think they'll make it.
Yeah, a couple data points. Ollie Watkins, I believe, is only behind Mo Salah and Erling Haaland for most goal contributions since 22-23. To your point about McGinn, well taken. The frustration, Monchi coming in, pairing up with Unai, the success they had at Sevilla, multiple Europa League titles. I do think that the certain amount of pressure for the absolute qualification for Champions League coincides with maybe them pushing the limit of profit and sustainability, financial fair play, because they did go all in. They took the risk. I think they're benefiting from the reward. The biggest criticism I've had all year was the lack of management coming off Champions League matches midweek, that I don't think they won a single game on the backside of any of the Champions League Tuesday or Wednesday games. So that's part of the evolution of Europa League to Champions League to becoming the consistency. Side note, I'm happy for Unai. He was the butt of the joke for a long time with Good Evening while he was at Arsenal. Obviously went sideways at PSG as well. That was more of an egotistical approach, I think, when trying to manage it, the big name players. He was one of many at the time with the Neymar and the Mbappes and all of those fun guys. But yeah, you're right, man. I mean, even guys like Matty Cash playing at such a high level, it's fun to watch them. It's great for Aston Villa. Just to, I said this earlier. I was thinking about, when the Birmingham City fan ran on the field and punched Jack Grealish in the face when they're in the championship, to see like what it is now. It's great. Villa Park, that atmosphere. I'm not sure if PSG would have gone down 2-0 at home, if their fans would have manufactured the response that we saw Villa fans manufacture at Villa Park. So as a neutral, I'm not a fan of Aston Villa at all. But to see what they've done and understand the historical relevance that the club has, it's incredible to see the rebound. And ultimately, you think about the American ownership and the transition of this ownership group. It's been pretty amazing to see the trajectory.
Do you have a hero, or should we go with Villa and?
No, I'm good. John McGinn is the guy that I want to play with. I mean, drops the booty, just a wand of a left foot. I love guys like that. Like you hate
drops
to play against.
Drops the booty.
No, man, what he does, like he drops it, he's like, he puts the butt out, and he just. So I had a guy I played with multiple clubs, Andy Williams, named Bama, Jamaican international, went to the World Cup, was the number 10 for Jamaica at the 98 World Cup. We were like 20 years old. He's amazing. But he would drop the booty. Every time he get the ball, if someone was close to him, he'd turn, boop, give him a bump, and no one could ever get the ball off him. So we called it the Bama booty. Many times I'd go tight and just take a booty in the chest. John McGinn's got that same booty. So shout out to Bama. Love you to death, my man. Miss you. But again, a little Bama booty drop.
It's a shame that his nickname is Brave Ass, because you can't use it in commentary. It's such a great name. It's such a great nickname.
I feel like you could.
You think? Depends where you are. I wouldn't use it. I'm not bold like you. You're an adventurous man, so I'm told.
Well, I've got to worry about the South American slang. Like there's nicknames for South American players that are untouchable here in the United States.
Just call them all number 7, number 11, number 12.
Well, there's one guy that played for Pumas, and his nickname, I still refuse to say it, but the nickname, the description was about his hair.
Right.
But if you said that nickname, people would think you're being racist because you can't say that nickname in any other way because it would be considered racist. But all the guys that I work with in South America, they're like, no, the nickname's about his hair. He's got flowing long hair. And I was like, go for it. I choose not to.
Yeah, I'm just going to call him Tim. Anyway, that's the end of today's Week in the Tackle. Brian Dunseth, thank you very much indeed. I'm Tom Rennie. It's Week in the Tackle. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch the program in full on YouTube, should you so wish. Tim Horsey is going to produce this program in post. Good luck, mate.
Sorry, Tim.
Sorry, buddy. See you next week.
Sorry, Tim.